It started with a question no one ever expected to hear answered so honestly. During a quiet segment of a recent interview, Jamie Dornan was asked what millions of fans had wondered for nearly a decade. The host leaned forward and said casually, "Be honest, Jamie, did you ever think about marrying Dakota Johnson?" The question landed like a thunderclap. For a second, Jamie laughed, the nervous, polite kind of laugh he uses when trying to deflect. But then, his smile faded. The room grew still. He looked down, rubbed his hands together, and said softly, "No. And there's a reason for that." The audience fell silent. Cameras zoomed in, catching the flicker of emotion in his eyes. And with that single sentence, the internet exploded. Within hours, clips of the moment went viral. Fans flooded social media with shock and heartbreak. "Did he just say that?" one tweet read. "After all these years, after everything between them?" To the world, Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson had always been more than co-stars. Their chemistry in 50 Shades of Grey had been too real, too raw. Every glance, every touch, every quiet moment behind the scenes carried an energy that couldn't be faked. They laughed together, defended each other in interviews, finished each other's sentences. It was effortless, the kind of bond people only see once in a generation of film. So when Jamie said he never wanted to marry her, fans didn't know what to think. Was he being cold, distant, or was there something deeper hiding behind those words? In truth, it had always been complicated. Back in 2015, when the first 50 Shades movie took over Hollywood, both actors were thrust into a level of fame neither had truly wanted. Jamie, newly married to Amelia Warner, had to navigate the impossible, balancing his real family life with a fictional relationship that millions believed was real. Dakota, for her part, became the face of desire, vulnerability, and rebellion all at once. The lines between reality and fantasy blurred, for the fans, and sometimes even for the actors themselves. They spent years together, working in emotionally charged scenes, trusting each other completely. What started as a working relationship quietly became a friendship built on understanding, a kind of unspoken loyalty. But that friendship came with a cost. For Jamie, the speculation never stopped. Every red carpet photo, every joke between them, every kind word became a headline. Jamie and Dakota secretly in love? Dakota breaks Amelia's heart? On-screen lovers, off-screen reality? He once admitted privately, "It felt like people were rooting for my marriage to fail just to make the fantasy real." It wore him down, not because of the rumors themselves, but because of what they did to Dakota. He could handle the noise, he'd lived through worse. But watching her get dragged into gossip she didn't deserve, watching people twist their friendship into something scandalous, that hurt. And that's why, on that stage years later, when he said, "No, I never wanted to marry her," his tone wasn't rejection. It was protection. He wasn't denying what they shared. He was setting it free. "I think people forget," Jamie continued in that interview, "that real connection doesn't always mean romance. Some bonds are too important to risk turning into something else." But at that point, the damage was already done. Headlines spread faster than the truth ever could. Fan pages reposted old interviews, photos of their laughter, their hugs, trying to decode the mystery all over again. What the world didn't see was what came next. After the cameras stopped rolling, Jamie sat back, visibly emotional. "It's strange," he said quietly to the host, off mic. "There was a time when I thought the world wanted us to fall in love. But what they didn't realize was, we already loved each other in our own way." The host, surprised, asked softly, "And you never thought of crossing that line?" Jamie looked up, eyes tired but kind. "If I had, I would have lost something far more important, her trust." Those words never aired. They weren't part of the segment that went viral. But to those in the studio that day, they were the most powerful thing he said. Because behind the drama, behind the shock, was a truth that only he and Dakota understood. That not every great love story ends in marriage. Some live quietly in the spaces between loyalty, respect, and memory. As one fan commented under the clip later that night. He didn't break her heart. He protected it. And that, perhaps, was the real story Jamie Dornan never meant to tell, until now. The interview hadn't even aired in full before the world started spinning around him. Tabloids ran with the headline. Jamie Dornan admits he never wanted to marry Dakota Johnson. Clips of the moment played on loop, that pause, that quiet tone, that single line pulled out of context. But the truth, as always, was far more complicated. The next day, Jamie's team reached out to him, asking if he wanted to clarify the comment before it spiraled further. He refused. "Let them say what they want," he said simply. "The people who matter already know what I meant." And one of those people was Dakota Johnson. They hadn't spoken in a while, months, maybe a year. Their lives had gone in different directions. She was working on a new film, he was back in London with Amelia and their children. But after that interview aired, she texted him. It was short, just 3 words. "I understand you." Jamie stared at the message for a long time. Then he smiled, not the polite, press-ready kind, but a real smile. Relief washed over him. He didn't need to explain himself. She already knew. Because for nearly a decade, they had shared something that didn't fit into the world's boxes. It wasn't romance. It wasn't friendship. It was something in between, a deep, unspoken connection born from years of trust, vulnerability, and the strange intimacy of storytelling. He remembered the early days, long nights on set, endless rehearsals, how Dakota would sit quietly between takes, humming to herself. He remembered the nervousness, the laughter, the way they held each other's gaze to find comfort in the chaos around them. They had built something real, but fragile. And he had known, even then, that crossing the line between friendship and something more would destroy it. "People always think love means possession," Jamie said later, in another quiet interview months after the storm had settled. "But real love, the kind that lasts, is freedom." He explained how Dakota had once told him she never wanted her relationships to feel like cages. She said love should be a choice, not a contract, he recalled with a soft smile. "I think that's why we worked so well together. We both understood that some things lose their beauty when you try to own them." When he was asked again what he meant by, "There's a reason I never wanted to marry her," Jamie finally told the full truth. "It wasn't about not caring," he said. "It was about caring too much. Dakota and I went through something together that very few people on Earth could understand. It connected us forever, but not in the way everyone imagined. She helped me when I was struggling with fame, with pressure, with who I was becoming. I didn't want to risk that connection by confusing it with something else. She deserved peace, and I already had a family who gave me that." The host asked softly, "So, you loved her?" Jamie's answer was quiet, but certain. "I still do, just not the way people think." That line hit like a storm. Not scandalous, not romantic, just raw honesty. It spread across social media with millions of likes and comments. One fan wrote, "That's not rejection. That's the purest kind of love." In Los Angeles, Dakota was asked about the quote during a press junket. She smiled faintly, looking down for a moment before saying, "Jamie's one of those people who doesn't have to say everything out loud for you to understand him. We'll always care about each other, deeply. We just live different lives now." Her words echoed his perfectly. The internet, of course, twisted it into 1,000 headlines. But for those who had followed their story for years, it was enough. They could feel it, the respect, the history, the bittersweet tenderness still lingering between them. Later that night, Jamie went home to find his daughters asleep and Amelia reading in bed. He kissed her forehead and sat quietly beside her, scrolling through the day's chaos online. Then he turned off his phone. Amelia looked up and asked softly, "Rough day?" Jamie smiled faintly. "Just honest," he said. She closed her book and reached for his hand. "Honesty suits you." He squeezed her hand back, grateful, for her, for Dakota, for everything he had learned along the way. In another time, another world, maybe the story between him and Dakota could have been different. But this one, the real one, had meaning. It wasn't a love story written for the cameras. It was one written quietly, in the space between two people who understood that connection doesn't need ownership to last. As Jamie once said, in his final reflection on the subject, "Some people you marry, some people you meet once and forget. But a few, a rare few, stay with you forever, because they changed you." Dakota was that for me. And perhaps that's why, when he spoke those fateful words, "I never wanted to marry her," he didn't mean regret. He meant gratitude. Because sometimes, love doesn't end with a wedding. It ends with understanding.